When we look back at the deep history of our planet, we usually search for apex predators. We study the anatomy of giant mammals and terrifying dinosaurs. But what if you went back to a time before terrestrial predators, before dinosaurs, and before trees even existed? 400 million years ago, during the Devonian period, the terrestrial landscape was almost barren. The highest plant life only grew a few feet off the ground. But towering over this primitive, low canopy environment was a colossal biological anomaly, a massive 24-foot-tall organism that dominated the entire horizon. Enter Prototaxites. Standing up to 24 feet tall and 3 feet wide, this was the undisputed king of the early landmasses. For over a century, paleontologists couldn't figure out how to classify it. They thought it was an early conifer tree, a strange form of algae, or a bizarre aquatic plant washed ashore. But modern forensic scans finally cracked the mystery, and the truth is far more bizarre than a giant tree. Prototaxites completely lacked the anatomy of plants. It had no leaves, no bark, and no wood. It was a colossal, towering fungus. It was a monumental organism that defied everything we thought we knew about early life on land. Today, we're running a full biological audit on Prototaxites to discover how a giant fungus managed to rule the Earth for 40 million years, and what catastrophic event finally wiped it from the map. To understand how an organism like this achieved such massive proportions, we have to audit its internal engineering. Plants use a complex network of cellulose and lignin to build strong, rigid, woody trunks. Prototaxites had none of that. Instead, its internal structure was a tightly interwoven matrix of microscopic fungal tubes called hyphae. It essentially used a biological weaving process to build a skyscraper. By packing millions of these microscopic threads together into incredibly dense cable-like bundles, Prototaxites achieved a structural integrity strong enough to withstand the brutal winds and storms of the early Devonian environment without snapping. But an organism of this sheer size requires massive resources to survive. Because it wasn't a plant, it couldn't utilize photosynthesis to generate its own energy from the sun. It had to feed. Prototaxites operated an incredibly vast subterranean root network that secreted powerful bioacids to dissolve rock and consume decaying organic matter. The true identity of this creature was one of the longest-running mysteries in paleontology. When it was first discovered in 1859, scientists misclassified it as rotting yew wood. It took until 2007 for researchers to run advanced carbon isotope scans on its fossilized remains to finally reveal its true nature. The true identity of this creature was one of the longest-running mysteries in paleontology. When it was first discovered in 1859, scientists misclassified it as rotting yew wood. It took until 2007 for researchers to run advanced carbon isotope scans on its fossilized remains to finally reveal its true nature. The data was conclusive. The carbon ratios perfectly matched an organism that digested its food externally, just like modern mushrooms. Prototaxites wasn't absorbing sunlight. It was actively consuming the decaying biological waste of the entire planet. To appreciate why this biological anomaly was so dominant, you have to look at the state of the Earth 400 million years ago. The terrestrial landscape was still in its infancy. The atmosphere was different, the soil was incredibly thin, and the most advanced plants were barely knee-high. There were no land-based vertebrates yet. No dinosaurs, no mammals, not even amphibians. The only mobile creatures on land were giant primitive arthropods and millipedes. In this low-lying ecosystem, Prototaxites was the absolute, undisputed titan, functioning as both the tallest structure and the center of the food web. Being a 24-foot-tall tower in a completely flat world offered a massive reproductive advantage. While the primitive plants struggled to spread their spores and seeds along the ground, Prototaxites utilized its extreme height to launch billions of fungal spores directly into the planet's upper wind currents. This high-altitude dispersal strategy allowed the giant fungus to completely colonize the globe. Fossils of Prototaxites have been discovered everywhere, from modern-day Canada to Saudi Arabia. It wasn't just a localized oddity, it was a worldwide ecological heavyweight. For an astonishing 40 million years, this organism held the highest rank on the terrestrial map. It outlasted mass extinction events and brutal climate shifts. It was the ultimate heavy-duty survivor in an era before nature had figured out how to build a proper tree. But Prototaxites wasn't just a passive observer taking up space. It was actively re-engineering the planet. Before this organism evolved, the Earth's crust was mostly barren rock. There was no deep, nutrient-rich soil for complex plants to root into. As the ultimate scavenger, this colossal fungus acted as the ecosystem's primary recycling engine. Its massive subterranean networks relentlessly broke down solid stone and digested all the dead biological matter on the surface, converting it into the very first batches of high-quality, life-sustaining topsoil. By literally formatting the planet's surface, Prototaxites accidentally engineered its own replacement. The rich, deep soil that it spent millions of years manufacturing created the exact environmental conditions required for higher-level plants to finally take root and thrive. Some forensic data even suggests it may have formed a massive symbiotic alliance with early algae, effectively making Prototaxites a colossal 24-foot-tall lichen. It may have provided the structural foundation, while the algae ran photosynthesis to generate extra fuel for the partnership. Whatever its exact biological classification, its role in Earth's history was undeniable. It was the pioneer. It cracked the rocks, built the soil, and paved the way for the total greening of the planet. It was the ultimate terraforming machine. But in the natural world, every dominant species is eventually outpaced by a superior evolutionary leap. Towards the end of the Devonian period, the planet experienced one of the most catastrophic shifts the terrestrial landscape had ever seen: the invention of true wood. Vascular plants finally cracked the biological code for lignin, the complex polymer that makes wood rigid. Suddenly, true trees exploded into the ecosystem. They grew faster, taller, and wider than the giant fungi. The Earth had officially entered the era of the forest. Prototaxites was completely outmatched by this new competition. Above ground, the new trees battled the fungus for physical space and blocked the wind currents it relied on for spore dispersal. Below ground, the highly advanced tree roots aggressively hijacked the water and nutrient supply. The colossal fungal architecture was simply too slow and required too many resources to compete with the highly optimized vascular trees. After ruling the planet for 40 million years, the ultimate prehistoric titan was starved out and driven to extinction. Today, the relatives of Prototaxites still quietly survive in the shadows of our modern forests, reduced to the tiny mushrooms on the ground. If you want to keep running these massive biological audits with us, make sure to like the video, subscribe to Terra Time Capsules, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next adventure. Keep exploring the grand, wild history of our planet with us.